I believe they're called enforcers, Gordon. I sell women's shoes.
And the Stallion.
Stallion, baby! I am not what you would call a handsome man. I'll kick you in the nuts and you'll smile at me and like it. All night long.
Welcome to another edition of the All Night Long Wrestling Podcast. We are your host. He is the Stallion. I am the Enforcer. And we are welcoming you back to yet another week of us doing our thing. I want to just apologize out of the gate if I sound nasally or if I sound bad. It's a high pollen concentration and I'm in the midst of an allergy attack. So, I'm sorry. Now, we have something to talk about today. We're gonna, if you're not familiar with our show, here's what we do. We give our opinions on the topics in professional wrestling that are hot. We talk about Raw, we talk about SmackDown, we talk about NXT, we talk about House of Hardcore, we talk about AWA,
Ring of Honor.
Ring of Honor. We talk about NWA, we talk about Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Jinder Mahal's physique, I think.
We definitely talk about Jinder Mahal's physique. We give our predictions for upcoming events. We give our recap for events. We talk about what's going on TV. Any kind of hot, what do they call it? Hot button topics? Is that a word?
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's fair. And the reason why we are giving you an overview of what we do on our show, the All Night Long Wrestling Podcast, is because we are now the official podcast of ProWrestling.com. That's a pretty big accomplishment. Do you think we are now the official podcast of ProWrestling.com because they have no idea what we look like?
That's probably like 85 to 90% of it, I would say, if I was going to ballpark it.
So what I'm going to do is I'm never going to show my face, and I'm going to steal your gimmick, and I'm going to wear a lucha mask everywhere I go.
You should. It's helped me in a lot of situations. I'll just leave it at that. I won't give any details.
For our new listeners, can you give me an example of when wearing a lucha mask helped you in a situation?
Well, I was on I-95 one time. No, I don't have any. There's no...
How about a driver's license photo?
Probably blind dates, I feel like.
Okay.
Several blind dates that I went on where I felt I was more successful with my entire face covered, except for the eye holes, than if I was, unmasked.
Can I now call you the Great Josuke?
I wouldn't use the word great. That's probably not a good word to describe me in any capacity.
Okay.
You can just call me, which is Josuke.
Like the Great Sasuke?
Or you can just call me Putz. Either way, I think is fine. So.
I'll tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to refer to you as Putz, but I am going to refer to you as the Stallion. New people are probably sitting there listening. The guy's burying his own physique and his own looks. Why are we calling you the Stallion? Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever took a look at this kid, you would say, you look at him and you say, it's 1985 Tully Blanchard. And sure enough, Tully Blanchard's nickname in the mid-'80s was the Midnight Stallion. And here we are. That might be the first time we've ever discussed why on this podcast. They call me the Enforcer because I look like Frankie Stacchino from Boy Meets World.
That's not...
That's true.
No, it's an Arn Anderson reference, obviously, for those longtime wrestling fans out there. Obviously, you're a big fan of Arn Anderson. You have legitimate tough guy traits and skills. I think that's also...
I have a beard. That's all I got.
You've been known to choke people out when needed. So I think that kind of goes with the whole enforcer gimmick that you've been rocking here for a while. So
it's very true. In my old gym, we used to call the jiu-jitsu instructor the Nature Boy. And every time a new kid would come to the gym and he thought he was, tough cookies, he'd look at me, he'd be like, double A, and he'd have me roll with the new guy and train with the new guy. So, I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm older, fatter, uglier, shorter, less attractive now than I was then. But
well, the good news is you didn't, you legitimately, rolled with a guy, worked with him right to see if he had it, whatever, how good he was. He didn't JBL the guy into just quitting whatever he was doing.
No, I didn't bully the guy beyond repair, only to get knocked out by a 162-pound man with a right hand.
Yeah, so,
I haven't been JBL'd. Now I wanted to talk to you. Apologize. See, the allergies are kicking in. This week's episode, we're going to talk about WWE's Backlash this Sunday. We're going to talk about NXT Takeover on Saturday. We're going to talk about House of Hardcore on Friday. Can we start off, because we're so topical, can we start off talking about the Randy Orton situation?
Sure. We can certainly, the Randy Orton / Rip Rogers /
Who
Will Ospreay.
The sack is Rip Rogers.
I think you're underestimating Rip Rogers.
I will sit here while you detail me what Rip Rogers has done.
I think he's a former pro wrestler that's maybe trained some folks as well. Probably an old school guy based off of what little I know about Rip Rogers. I guess that's the best.
That's fair. So long story short, a wrestler had tweeted, I'm not going to go over the whole thing, Rip Rogers, somebody, I guess you write something down in Microsoft Note on the iPad or in the notepad, and then you take a picture of it to get around the whole 160 characters thing, right? So pretty much this guy said, he was burying the indie style. He's like, dive, strong style, dive, and he's saying what the matches are like, and everybody handshakes, and that's not wrestling, and they're ruining wrestling. They're ruining wrestling, and this is from an indie wrestler himself to Rip Rogers, and Rip Rogers retweeted it and agreed with him. Now, in doing so, he kind of alienated a lot of people in the business. I know they mentioned he buried Kenny Omega. He buried him without saying his name. He said something about wrestling a 9-year-old girl, which Kenny Omega did for I forget the promotion. It was not Dragon Gate.
I don't know. I don't think you want me commenting on that, so I'm going to leave that alone.
The Young Bucks super kicked a 5-year-old girl.
I think that was at request, though, right? Doesn't somebody request that?
Well, I don't think Kenny Omega was shooting on a 9-year-old girl.
I don't know how that came to pass.
But
real quick, Rip Rogers, by the way, is the head trainer at OVW currently, and he's trained a couple of wrestlers, most notably Deonna Purrazzo, Ryan Nemeth, who I think is the brother of Dolph Ziggler, and things of that nature. That's all. And he's retired. Obviously, he used to wrestle in WCW. That's a very, very brief background of Rip Rogers. So
okay, he wrestled for Jim Crockett. Okay. So they said how, you shouldn't have to do 20 super kicks in a match and do crotch chops and things of this nature. And the independent wrestling style is, quote unquote, killing the business. Okay. Now this is a direct shot at guys like a Will Ospreay, guys like a Ricochet, guys like even a John Morrison, and because they're a more athletic style and selling isn't as prevalent now in professional wrestling. Is that a statement you would agree with?
I guess, yeah. I mean, if there's different styles, obviously, and especially these days with independent wrestling and the different, I don't know, a lot of the stuff that happens there that maybe doesn't happen in the mainstream promotions and the style and stuff like that. So certainly there's a difference in how guys wrestle today and how matches are put on outside of WWE and some of the mainstream promotions. So I guess it's just a matter of, an old school guy who doesn't see the benefit or maybe feels like it's a detriment to the wrestling business for wrestlers and matches to be performed that way. Everyone's got different opinions on things and maybe what their preferences are as far as match style and how guys wrestle, whether it's mat wrestling, chain wrestling, submission style wrestling, high flying, stuff like that. I don't know. I can't personally. I don't like. Just for me, I think the fact that there's a variety is a good thing, right? You can, if you want to watch a match that's maybe more submission based, then maybe you go watch a match from Evolve or something, or maybe some of the wrestlers in New Japan or something like that, depending on who it is. And
English style too. That's what I think of.
Yeah, so there's stuff like that out there, and then if you want to watch a more high-flying style, then you can watch some more independent type stuff. Like you can watch PWG matches, or some of the guys in ROH do high-flying stuff. And Lucha Underground. Yeah, so there's things like that. And then, obviously, so it's just I don't see a harm to those different styles, and I don't know that independent wrestling has enough of a following or enough of a distribution across like the world, other than like YouTube and like DVDs, to say that it's killing the business, because I'm sure like 75% of fans that watch WWE have probably never watched a Ring of Honor match or PWG or things like that. So I don't know. I think it's probably a stretch to say that, if I was just, I guess, reacting to what the whole thing is about.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I'm just gonna read something that Randy Orton wrote. Sorry to the indie marks, indie guys, and old timers who do dives. Took offense. I think Randy was drunk when he wrote this, so I'm reading it word for word. Just having a good time over a few drinks in Denmark, closing the SmackDown Live tour, while beating Raw and making over $5 million in the last 11 shows. Now I know to some that doesn't equate to a standing room only crowd of 150 people paying $8 at an armory somewhere, but in the big boy world, that's called putting asses in seats. So enjoy your flips, dives, and 20 super kicks per match, to each their own. I will go dive back into my 13th title run and get ready to flip when my bank statement comes this month. ... Headlock. Now, I'm going to give my opinions on this real quick. Also, Randy had a back and forth with Bubba Ray Dudley. They had some heat, and Bubba said something along the lines of dive, and he posted a picture of himself diving on the Bullet Club, I guess, from a little while ago. And Randy said, there's a difference between a young, hungry talent diving and an old, out-of-shape vet falling. Now, here's my problem. I'm going to say a couple things real quick. First, I think Randy can talk about the fans. I mean, do they necessarily pay your salaries? Not directly, but I don't think it's ever the best move for the face and the champion of a company and the face to be talking about the fans like that. But I think there's a big disconnect, and it's disrespectful to be talking about the veterans who are wrestling in quote unquote indie promotions. Now, Randy, because his last name is Orton, will never have to wrestle in the independent scene. He also did not have to come up in the independent scene, and he was the youngest WWE champion, or WWF champion at that time, maybe? WWF?
World Heavyweight Champion.
World Heavyweight Champion, sorry. In the world at 22, maybe? I don't know how old he was.
It was around 22, 23, I think.
I'll tell you this right now. Nepotism is alive and well, and Randy Orton would not have been in the WWE at that age if he wasn't the son of Cowboy Bob Orton. That's just facts. Not saying he's not a great worker, he's not a great wrestler, but he would not have had that leg up. So for him to knock these guys on the independent scene doing their thing, trying to get themselves over, trying to make a name for themselves, I think that's inappropriate, and I think it's disrespectful. And on top of that, I think there's a certain air of jealousy, because a lot of these guys in WWE are compared to the independent guys, quotes around that, the independent guys, and that working style. And the WWE has been a somewhat watered-down product for a long time, which is why NXT has been doing so well, because NXT is incorporating more of that traditional, competitive, professional wrestling aspect. I'm sure there's an air of resentment, too. I'm sure Randy resents guys like a Kevin Owens, like a Seth Rollins, like a Samoa Joe, because they have that, I guess, the cool guy, independent mystique behind them, and Randy never had that, so I think he's kind of barking up the wrong tree. I can understand if he has a problem with the style, that's fine, but don't take it out on the guys doing that, because that's the way, that's the way wrestling is progressing. I mean, back in the day, every match from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s was headlock, get a hold, work, heels and faces, they work the same formula over and over and over, and it wasn't until I would say, I don't want to say ECW was the difference maker, but it wasn't until the early 90s when that style started changing. I mean, when was the first time you saw a face versus face match?